Good afternoon, everyone. Professor York. I'm going to go and review a few concepts that we talked about last week. This dealt with channels, and the first lecture, and then the second will be in terms of customer relationships, some tactics, as well as metrics. So let's get on to channels. Channels we're going to talk about, are going to be related to, in the business model canvas, being distribution channels. So it's how we get the product, as we can see here with the truck, from where it is, your manufacturing facility or your server, or from your warehouse to the customer, and allows you to get a broader base of reach to more individuals. And so we have individuals and firms who play a role in that. So it makes it possible to get the flow of goods from you, the producer, to intermediaries, to ultimately a buyer. And we'll get into this a little bit further, but the intermediaries do play a role. They purchase the items from the seller, they store them, they resell them, others represent the sellers as agents. But I think one key thing that I want to highlight, because I've seen this in several of the business model canvases, is that we should not get this confused with communication channels, okay, or media channels such as TV, print, or digital, such as some of the social media outlets such as Facebook, okay, to engage your audience. Those fall within customer relations, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So there's two types of channels. There's actually a few different types, but the two that I try to bring out first is physical, and that's talking about moving physical products from point A to point B, and usually wholesalers and retailers, and we'll get into it a little further. And then there's digital, and that's where we have products that can be both physical as well as digital products that are moved through vis-a-vis website, App Store. Amazon is probably the best example of physical products being a place where you can buy physical products as well as digital products, and be able to receive them. So, and then there's the App Store and the Google Store. So, and the App Store typically is we're dealing with more digital type of products that are there. But then we need to think about the other two types, which are you going to be moving the product directly from your company to the customer? We call that direct. So usually in smaller, more niche-oriented type of businesses, Tesla is a very good example there. Or indirect, where we're doing mass market, as we see with Amazon or Walmart, where we're really trying to scale the business to reach a broader audience. So let's give us a few examples. Here's the B2C, as we look at several examples where we can go direct to the consumer, or like in General Motors, we go through a retailer such as a auto. We have various auto shops. We have various dealerships that are available in the local area to be able to then sell automobiles to the consumer. And then you can have like Mars, which is involved with the candy and as well as the dog food business, where they'll move product through wholesaler, ultimately to a retail and consumer. We see this as well in the wine business because needing to account for three-tier system in terms of distribution of alcohol products because of different state rules and regulations and tax requirements. And then producer, you can go in terms of having an agent who may have specialty licensure around a specific area. Example would be in terms of financial products or insurance as well, and that they may play a role because of specialty knowledge, licensure, etc., in terms of moving products through a specific chain. In the B2B space, you can go direct, such as IBM, working with individual industrial users. We see this with Oracle, okay? But then you can have companies like Caterpillar, which may work through industrial distributors to get to the individual user. And we see that with here up in San Luis Obispo County, where we actually have resellers of farm equipment that are in the local area. And then you have where you could have an agent that represents the producer, okay, that then moves the product to industrial user. as a reseller, and then ultimately you could have an agent and the distributor playing roles in there, working with the industrial users as well. So again, depending on the product and the size of the company and the complexity of the business, you can have multiple intermediaries in the distribution channel in even the B2B sector. And then when we look at electronic digital, we could look at really a number of significant changes that have happened over the last 10 to 15 years, which has been because of the internet, and it's allowed for a lot of efficiency. So if you're a publisher, you can move to a wholesaler and ultimately Amazon, that ultimately can be the reseller to the consumer, both digital as well as physical. If you are looking for an Auto Bytel has now established itself in terms of where auto manufacturers who have now distributed dealers are trying to move product. Auto Bytel becomes a virtual broker. Actually, we bought our last car that way to the consumer, because Auto Bytel can then have a broad reach to look for different diversity of makes, models, colors, equipment packages, and prices. And then you have also where you could have a commercial airline that works with a reseller. I call Orbitz actually an aggregator, where they're able to pull together a variety of different offerings from different airlines to be able to satisfy travel needs. And you can even have that tied with aggregating in rent-a-car as well as aggregating in a hotel, to then in one-stop shopping for the consumer to be able to plan a business or a vacation, business trip or a vacation. And then last but not least is Dell. And Dell built its business originally in terms of direct to consumer, although Dell now works through intermediary channels such as wholesalers and Best Buy in terms of selling physical product. The bottom line with the internet is functions are performed at a lower cost than traditional channels, which is very important. And it allows you to combine electronic and traditional media to create time, place, form, and possession of value for the customer. So pros and cons. The pros, what happens in the channel is it allows you to account for things, especially if you have items that are subject to regulatory review, e.g. taxes, or like with pharmaceuticals, that we have to make sure there's certain accounting. Sometimes we do not have adequate warehousing, and a channel can play a role in terms of inventory management and warehousing of product, and as well logistics management in terms of getting that actual product to the retailer, and then also helping with moving that product with incentives and promotional programs in marketing sales, and then handling returns rather than you having to deal with it directly. The wholesaler or the intermediary can play a role in that space. And I think the biggest value is allowing for that broad reach to build a national brand, which is very, very important, has balance sheet implications. And it is necessary if you want to get big and cross the chasm, moving into the early majority. The flip side of this is that you're going to deal with a discount, 40, 60%, and that you need to play where you provide incentives, okay, in the retailer level. That may be end caps, shelf space, and featured deals, because the game in the retail space is about velocity and making turns of inventory. And they will require a significant commitment on you as the manufacturer to have advertising dollars to pull through. Okay, that means pulling through, meaning advertising, again, with that incentive to create velocity. And likewise, this is not exclusive. They could be working with competing products as well. And last but not least is you may not get sales credit, such as in Walmart, until the ultimate actual buyer buys the product instead of what we see in other channels where you can record the sale once the product is moved out of the factory. We call that ex-factory sales into the distribution channel. So that's that for our discussion here. Hopefully this provides some insights to channels, particularly distribution channels, which shouldn't be confused with marketing channels, which we will talk to in the next mini lecture.